All right. And we're back on the Splash Panel, where every week we assemble a group of industry guests to discuss all things comic book. I am Tim Dowd, and I'm joined by
Thomas Leverton.
There it is. And this week we have Sam Harper, comic book guru, as well as part-time comic book reviewer, and Maria, the mage of all things World of Warcraft and Wolverine. This week our topic is, do you feel that comic book sales help drive audiences to movies, or do you think it works in a greater way vice versa?
You loaded that question to your favor.
Did I?
You did. You totally did.
All right. How would you phrase the question? Be neutral about it.
Does comic book sales bring an audience to the movie, or does the movie sell the comic book?
Fine. Yes, that's the one.
Okay.
Maybe. There's insurrection in the ranks already. I don't like it. It's episode 2.
Thoughts?
In the beginning, it was the comic book sales that drove people to the movies, because the movies came out, and did anyone really know who Iron Man was except for true hard comic book fans? I mean, they were like, "Oh, we want to see this movie," and they brought someone, and then the word spread and everything blew up. But now, when where we just finished our second Avengers movie, I think the comic books are now being picked up by people who've never thought about checking out comics before, because they loved Avengers so much, so they want to get into comics. So now the comic book sales are being driven by that. So I think it was one way, but now it's another way.
And I totally agree with that too, where the movies actually are driving the sales now. We're true fans, where we grew up with it. Now if you take fans from movies that watch the movies versus the fans that actually grew up on the comic books, and you put us together, you're going to get the arguments, because we're like, well, you just got into it. I grew up with it. There's so much of a bigger world than it actually is. And they're like, but why is it different than this? And why is it different than that? You're watching the movie. You're not getting the true sense. For you to really understand, I always tell people, if you want to watch the movie and really get into the movie, well, get the comic books first. Get into the comic books.
You use a really interesting term. You said true sense.
Yes.
So if someone only knows the movies, they only know the TV shows,
Right.
and they enjoy those characters there,
Right.
what makes that lesser? What makes that not the true sense of the character, just because Quicksilver's hair doesn't look stupid?
A lot of the times, they feel, when they come back to the comic books and they read it, they feel deflated.
Okay. So you feel that, but did you never feel like comic book fans go when they see the movie and they're just like, "Aw, he's dead"?
Well, we do too.
Yeah.
But, like with case in point, we're the Avengers, and I know there's always a seesaw here when it comes to that, is that when we saw the Avengers, some stuff was still true to the comic books, where some of it, they still waylaid exaggeration, where we were excited. The reason why the Avengers became so famous versus the DC comic ones was because they kind of still kept a little bit of the comic book sense stories a little bit true to their stories. So a lot of the comic book fans were like, yes, a little bit.
A little bit.
Versus not the other way around, where if you come back to the comic books, they're like, but what do you mean?
I gotta be honest, I don't agree with that necessarily. At first, I used to feel that way, like, you know, you would get deflated when you'd see the movie and like, well, it doesn't have all the stuff that the comic books had, like, they didn't talk about this, so they didn't go this, so they went a different way. And then I realized it's almost kind of elitist, like, hey, you know, I work at the comics, I knew this before you guys knew this, you used to see this movie, oh, you don't know what's really going on, you didn't talk about his alcoholism, or or you didn't talk about, like, you know, when he crashed his Lamborghini and the Rhodey was riding Iron Man, you don't know about that.
You think you like Thor? I know him when he was a frog.
Yeah,
You know.
I know the real Thor. But it's like, this is a totally new thing. This is, before we only used to get a comic book movie once every 3 years. Now we have like a large amount of them, so people are getting into them with
4 or
that.
5 a year,
and we got to be nice to the noobs and let them see how this new comic book is, and understand the characters through the movies, and then maybe come into the comic books and see the full history, you know?
If we want to be nice, maybe we shouldn't call them noobs. It's one suggestion, but Tom, what do you think?
That's what we call our people in World of Warcraft.
That's what we call our people.
Including myself.
Okay, all right.
I don't know, and I agree with Sam as far as in conversation of movies changing things up. I've actually really enjoyed that because we're now on our third reboot of Spider-Man, something like that, and if fourth, I think it's, but like I enjoy it when they bring something new into it and change things, and you never know when you may get a Harley Quinn from the Batman animated series that totally changes everything, and you get a brand new incredible character out of it. So that's stuff I like Spectacular Spider-Man making Harry Osborn the first Venom, which made a lot of sense but brought a new personal dynamic to the Venom Spider-Man relationship that was never there with Eddie Brock. But going to the topic of comic book sales driving movies and vice versa, I think that movies obviously boost a comic book's sales figures to a degree, though, but it's smaller than we think, because like I remember when Aquaman by Jeff Johns was the #1 selling, like when DC did their reboot, and all 10 of the top 10 comic sales list was DC's stuff, led by Aquaman of all things, no film, no anything, over the Amazing Spider-Man, over Spider-Man sales figures of the same year. So,
right, but don't you think that Spider-Man has always existed as an icon? People have always known who Spider-Man was. Marvel has had a very hard time keeping Ant-Man a bankable property, you know? And it's like Guardians of the Galaxy. The reason no one knows Guardians of the Galaxy is because Guardians of the Galaxy has spent most of the time it's existed canceled. Like, it just hasn't existed.
Right.
And now we have a Guardians of the Galaxy book. We have Ant-Man book. Like, I think that the awareness has made these icons, at least temporarily. These might fizzle, but at least temporarily they can support a book.
Yeah, and it's, if you're talking about temporary dollars, I think it works that way, because Ant-Man's got his own series, and it's going to stay here, but, I mean, I hate to say it, but more than likely Ant-Man's going to get canceled after 4 months.
Yeah.
And Guardians of the Galaxy, as popular as it's been, I mean, they've infused it with characters like Venom and Captain Marvel to try and boost it up. It's not just Star-Lord in there. And, I mean, they've done, like, 2 crossovers with the X-Men through this whole thing.
Just
so
to keep it going, really.
Yeah, all in 1 year. So
we gotta do this real quick. Okay, our studio audience. I want you guys, we're gonna do a little bit of an applause poll. If you feel that movies drive sales to comic books more, I want you to applaud right now. All right, and if you think the opposite is true, yeah, Jerry.
it was secretly me clapping.
Tom's a ventriloquist clapper. Yeah. All right. All right. We'll be back right here on the Splash Panel.